Journalism Institute at the University of Missouri. Welcome to Global Journalist. I'm Joshua Kransberg, in for Jason McClure. 25 years ago, if I had said the phrase, be sure to check out more on our website, like us on Twitter, and download our app, you'd think I was crazy. But that's where the world, and the news world in particular, is at today. Digital platforms are more popular than ever, with a growing number of people saying they get their news on their computers, phones, and tablets. So with seemingly everyone online and a plethora of news websites out there, how does one site set itself apart from the rest? That's the job of our guest today, Meredith Artley. She's the editor-in-chief of CNN Digital. Meredith, welcome to Global Journalist.
Thanks for having me.
So, looking at your resume, you've worked at LATimes.com, NewYorkTimes.com, CNN.com, and now, like I said, the editor-in-chief of CNN Digital. What drew you to the web as opposed to TV or print journalism?
Because it combines the best of all of those things. I was a student here at the University of Missouri, and I studied broadcast journalism, but I got really attracted early on in the mid-90s when journalism on the web was just becoming a thing that one could do, a profession that one could have. And I got really attracted to this idea of, oh, you can do text and video and images and talk to audiences and find out what audiences are doing and consuming on your sites, and it can be global. That's incredible. That's way better than starting at a local TV station.
You told me that your first job out of college was at the New York Times. Tell me about that.
Yeah, and now people give me a hard time about that, and I understand.
What a way to start.
It sounds a little plush, right? and it was, and I was extremely lucky, and here's why. That's not a self-effacing thing. I started there at a time when the site had just launched. This was the site launched in '95, I believe, at the end of the year, and I started in 1996. And they were looking for web producers. They were looking for people who were basically going to put up the paper online. That was the job. Copy and paste the newspaper online, work a little bit with technology. I had just enough experience as a student, and I was willing to work horrible hours and get paid a low wage in order to take a job at the New York Times. And I think that was a pretty good decision. It was a blast.
I can't say I blame you there. So you've seen the way news, how it's delivered, change pretty dramatically in your career. I mean, you still have print, you still have TV, you still have radio. But other than the method of actually getting the news, what has changed the most, in your opinion, from when you started?
I think of a few things. I think of the expansion, the exponential expansion of technologies and platforms. So it used to be when I started that it was about putting a story on a website. It's no longer about that. It's about crafting a story in multiple ways and thinking about all the places that you can program those stories and thinking about which audiences you want to reach and which channels and which platforms and which screens and which devices and what technologies you can use to reach those audiences wherever they are. It's not about destination sites and destination publishing anymore. It's about going out and getting your audiences where they are.
Well, that leads into my next question. So how can newsrooms best integrate these multi-platform stories and ideas?
You know, it's a lot about trying to stay aware of the conversation of all these new emerging technologies. They're all over the place, and there's something new every week. There's a new technology, there's a new idea, there's a new tool. It's not possible for any one human being to know all of those things, but it's possible to have a good team and to have people who specialize in certain areas, whether it's video storytelling or listening on social or audience analytics and data gathering or design and motion graphics. It's possible to hire people that are all different stripes of journalists that just happen to be digital. But it's almost a misnomer these days to say digital journalists. It's almost redundant.
So it doesn't matter if you're a TV journalist or a newspaper journalist, you should pretty much know how to do everything.
I think at CNN, we're all digital now. There are not very many people who work at CNN who don't somehow touch or impact or collaborate with my digital team or me. It's really, almost all the work that we do has an impact on digital and gets produced and edited for mobile or Snapchat or Facebook or Twitter or any one of our sites in the portfolio, whether it's CNN.com or International or Money. with kind of a different approach in mind. And so we need the whole organization at CNN to contribute that. I do think CNN is a little bit more advanced than other news organizations. We've got scale, we've got resources, but I see it happening in other places too.
So let's go off that newsroom and digital. One quote I heard from you, or I read from you, was said that in the newsroom or in the newsroom story ideas time, we go digital first, or we look at what's going on in the digital world. Can you explain that a little bit?
I would say I would edit myself a little bit, and I would say that it's story first. And digital is the perfect place to think about all the tools, all the technologies. Is it video? Is it photo? Is it a lot of text? Is it a little bit of text? All the design elements that you can integrate to tell a story in the best way possible. And digital brings all of those things together. So you start story first, and digital is a natural place to do that because it can house so many of those things.
So you're in charge of CNN Digital. I checked the numbers. You get about 60 to 65 million unique visitors a month. The closest competitor in news organization terms is Fox, and it gets about 50 to 55 million. What separates CNN so much from its competitors, and how did it get there?
Hold on, repeat that data to me again.
CNN gets about 60 to 65 million. This was back in January, so things might have changed. But yeah. CNN gets about 60 to 65 million unique visitors a month, and Fox, as its closest competitor, gets somewhere between 50 to 55 million. That includes web-based and portable-based, so a phone and a tablet, compared to someone's laptop or desktop computers.
Okay, so the data that I have shows that CNN is number one in multi-platform views. So to your point, desktop and mobile, number one. So that's over, and I think our closest competition on that is Yahoo, BuzzFeed, HuffPo. Fox isn't even in the top 10.
Really?
Now we might, this again being the internet and data and metrics and lies, damn lies, and statistics. I don't know if I'm quoting Shakespeare on that or not, but those things, you know, so there's lots of different data sets out there. But we care a lot about multi-platform views, uniques. We care a lot about video streams, in which we're number one. Our competition these days, from a digital point of view, tends to be BuzzFeed and the New York Times and Huffington Post and a little bit Yahoo. So the CNN competitive set is digitally is not Fox or MSNBC. They can do great work, but they don't really end up being the people who are the organizations that are nipping at our heels.
Talk to me more about BuzzFeed. Not to denigrate them, but when people think of BuzzFeed, they think honestly of cat videos and listicles and stuff like that. How seriously is CNN Digital taking, and CNN in general, taking BuzzFeed when it comes to a news organization?
BuzzFeed is a formidable competitor, and it's oversimplifying it to say that it's, you know, cats and lists. They do that. I don't see them doing a lot on cats these days. Maybe I'm wrong.
Cats are passé.
Yeah,
now.
Cats are so 2013. I think they're doing incredible work, and I look at how they're hiring. They're putting some really talented journalists in all the corners of the globe who are not doing cats or animal coverage of any sort. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with cats.
And are not doing lists, which sometimes lists are a fabulous way to tell a story, and we do those at CNN too. So they're a formidable competitor. They're a pure digital play, and not so much. They don't have the advantage that CNN has in terms of having a global 24/7 television network in both CNN US and CNN International. So we definitely have strengths that they don't have, but they're a good competitor.
Do you see that changing in the future? Do you see organizations like BuzzFeed, Mashable, Vice? I know Vice is a strict news site. But do you see that changing in the near future?
I think I think those competitors will remain competitors for a while, and it's good. As a competitive person, sometimes that drives me a little crazy when I see them inching up or over us, and that happens. But I also think that's a healthy part of the industry. I think I see that a lot of our competitive set wants to get into television. So again, that's a strength that CNN has, so we feel good about that, and we're always looking at ways inside CNN. I'm not just the editor-in-chief for CNN Digital, but I'm a key leader for CNN worldwide, and so that means it's about not just digital in a corner or digital in a silo, but collaborating with all of these thousands of journalists worldwide who are doing all kinds of stories for CNN and helping tell those stories across an array of digital platforms.
Just a reminder, this is Global Journalist. I'm Joshua Kransberg in for Jason McClure. This week, a conversation with Meredith Artley, Editor-in-Chief of CNN Digital. A reminder that if you're interested in more Global Journalist content, visit us online, of course, at globaljournalist.org. There you can read in-depth articles on international affairs and free press issues, and download past episodes from our archive. We're also on social media, much to Meredith's delight. You can like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at GlobalJourn. So we talked about how newsrooms have changed dramatically in the past few years. What about the reader or the viewer? How have their experiences changed or even shaped how newsrooms act today?
The thing about the reader or the viewer is that we know more about them. We know how and when they use us. And again, that's thanks to all these advancements in technologies and tools. So we have real-time data that we can look at. Every single one of our nearly 300 digital journalists working at CNN Digital are armed with a suite of tools that they can look and say, oh, well, my story's doing really well on this platform, or oh, my story's not doing so well, so what have I made and edited and changed a headline, or what have I used a different photo, or thought of surfacing a different angle? How would audiences respond to that? So it's wonderful that we can think about how we shape and edit our stories to get great reaction from audiences. And furthermore, we know if they're using us on what device and maybe what time of day certain types of content seem to resonate in certain areas of the world. If video does well in South Korea on mobile devices, maybe there's something we should do about that in terms of our editorial strategy, right?
So this is a simple question with, I can already tell you, a not so simple answer, but what does a reader or a viewer want from their news source?
I think they want their news source to be where they are. They don't want to have to necessarily come and seek it out. So that's why one of our big initiatives is growing our global social team and really trying to think about how can we get in front of people where they are. We want people to come to CNN.com, and we are the #1 most visited desktop site, and that's great. But at the same time, we're getting massive amounts of traffic on mobile, and we know that social and mobile go very well together because most people look at their mobile devices and they might be checking Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever it might be. CNN needs to be in those places. That's a great way for us to be able to say, here's a story that we think matters to you, and you don't have to go out of your way to come to our destination because you already have a lot of demands on your time.
One thing CNN has done or was at the forefront of was, I don't know the term that it's professionally known by, but citizen journalism.
Yeah.
Getting the story from from people out there. Do you think how has that changed journalism today? Because now anyone with an iPhone in their pocket can be a journalist, but at the same time, they're not necessarily, they don't necessarily have the same tools that you have or that I have from the education and the training we've got. How has that changed journalism?
It's a wonderful change. And CNN launched iReport, I believe it was 2007, and that was the first or one of the first social media news networks. And it's a wonderful thing. And we still have it. But in the meantime, the landscape has completely changed. All those social media platforms that I just mentioned, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Instagram, Snapchat, there's more exploding every day. WeChat, WhatsApp, Kakao, Line. I mean, it's crazy, right? There's a lot of social networks out there and more to come, and it's wonderful. And that means that there's the opportunity for us to listen to what our audiences are talking about, what's trending. Is that worth a story? Is that worth us investigating a little bit more, a little bit deeply, and verifying and helping clarify and separate fact from fiction? It helps give us the opportunity to, again, reach audiences where they are. So I have never seen citizen journalism, which now also feels, like a term that's so 2009 or something, but I've never seen that in conflict with professional journalism. I think it's something that helps support and grow storytelling. And you got to fact check and you got to verify and you got to do all the things about accuracy and making sure that you don't breach that critical layer of trust that CNN in this case has with our audiences. But that's okay. You can do that with citizen journalism and stories we find on social media as well.
Accuracy is a very good point. How do you balance accuracy and immediacy while covering a breaking news story, especially online, which is, Ferguson is the perfect example of the past year or so of a fast-moving, fast-changing news story with multiple different angles and multiple different places for reporters to be. How do you, talk to me about the challenges that you and journalists out there face while covering a story of that size and scope?
It's better to be right than it is to be first on the topic of dealing with breaking news stories. CNN was founded with this crazy idea. Who thought that anyone would want news 24/7? That was an outlandish idea 35 years ago when Ted Turner proposed that to the world and launched CNN. And now look at where we are today, where 24/7 news is ubiquitous, and CNN is by far from the only player in that space. So that does add some extra urgency or wind at your back or pressure. But as we talk about throughout all of CNN, and this comes from the very top, the president of CNN Worldwide, Jeff Zucker, says this: when we know we've got a breaking news event, just take a breath, slow down, get it right. It's not worth a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds to get something out and take that risk and get it wrong. That said, mistakes still happen, and as long as humans are in journalism, there'll be errors, no matter if it's because it's a breaking news story or just because there's a lot of demands on people.
What about, to go back to Ferguson, just again, because it's such a perfect example, a good case study of journalism, how difficult was it? I know that you were not the editor-in-chief at that point, but the ongoing protests, the ongoing riots, the police crackdowns, how tough was that for journalists out there as part of CNN to get the facts straight, for lack of a better term?
Well, I wasn't on the ground, so personally I can't say. I was managing editor at that time, so I was still in a position of leadership and power then. It was a tough story to cover. We had dozens of teams on the ground at multiple moments throughout the arc of that story. It was hard to cover. But you're there, and you're on the ground, and you're being an eyewitness, and you can say, this is who I talked to, and this is how we know what we know at this moment in time, and be as open and transparent with audiences in a chaotic situation that was sometimes dangerous for not just journalists but everybody on the ground, and do your best to tell the story in a chaotic situation. And I think our teams did a good job at that.
You mentioned all those social media apps a few minutes ago. Which online creation or which app or which social media platform would you say has changed journalism and news the most, if you had to pick one?
I will say, from the CNN perspective, our channel on Snapchat is something that we are particularly proud of. One, for a couple of reasons. It reaches, I think the average age of a Snapchat user is 5. It's not 5, but it's young. It's extremely young.
More than Twitter, more than Facebook. Facebook has, 1 billion users worldwide. Twitter probably has, I would think, around the same, pretty similar numbers, I would imagine. More Snapchat is the one that you said has changed the game.
It has not changed the game in terms of the sheer size of audience and impact. It has changed the game in terms of us saying, here's a platform by which we can reach an audience segment that's very important to us. And here's a platform that's inherently mobile, and we know we want to be more on mobile. And here's a platform that demands, through some kind of creative restriction, demands that we edit and conceive and think of our stories in a different way. So our design team is looking at new graphics and type treatments and illustration treatments for every single one of our stories on Snapchat. We put music in the background sometimes. We edit the stories and present them differently on Snapchat for a very specific audience. So it's changed the game in a way of getting the news organization to say, here's this this really opportunity to do something bespoke for a particular audience. And I don't think Facebook and Twitter have done that in the same way. They've had a bigger impact in terms of traffic. But yeah, I'll go with Snapchat as my answer.
Okay. Well, just a reminder, this is Global Journalist. I'm Joshua Kransberg in for Jason McClure. This week we're talking with Meredith Artley. She's the current president of the Online News Association, as well as editor-in-chief of CNN Digital, an award-winning news site that recently garnered an honor medal from the Missouri School of Journalism for its work. Meredith, again, you mentioned all these different platforms. Talk to me about a story and how it differs from the main site, CNN.com, to how you're going to market it on Facebook, to how you're going to market it on Twitter, to how you're going to market it on Snapchat. I mean, talk to me about the thought process, the discussions you have in the newsroom. Sort of walk me through it.
We often talk about, with some of our key stories and events, we talk about creating a pregame, game on, and postgame plan. And within that is the life cycle of a story that sometimes it can last over weeks, not days. So this idea that once you're done with a story, that you publish it and put it out on a website and maybe retweet it or post it on Facebook, that's pretty passé. The opportunity is to create an experience where, as you're reporting a story, think about what parts of your reporting process should be made public. Are there conversations and questions that you might want to be having with your audiences? For example, hey, I'm working on a story about the Global Journalist. Can we please, I'd like to have a conversation with audiences about that.
Talk to me about that, the process language part, because what I've noticed is that because reporters and producers are more accessible than ever, they're finding it that they have to have that process language to sort of keep readers and viewers up to speed with what they're covering and how they're, like, the step-by-step process. Would you say that's true?
The process language in terms of
say, I'm covering this story, I just got this interview, I'm currently writing this story.
Yes.
The fact that every reporter now is on Facebook and Twitter, it sort of demands an accountability, for lack of a better word, with its viewers and readers.
It all depends on the story, right? So it's story first. There are some times where you really don't want your reporting process to be transparent because you might be working on a sensitive or investigative piece. That's fine, and that's fine and good. There are some times when it might be a really smart idea to have a Facebook Q&A or to create a Twitter hashtag that you think can have some impact and spread a little bit around a certain issue or a beat that as a journalist you might be covering for the coming months or beyond. So the point is to always think story first. What's the story I want to tell? Who does it matter to, and why? And then to think about, what's my plan to get that story out there and share it with people, because it's no longer enough to put it up and walk away.
So you say it's always story first. Point blank, what is the future of storytelling? What is the future of it?
I don't know. I wish I knew. I don't know. I do think we will continue to see exponential growth in terms of the tools and technologies and the platforms on which journalists can play. I think that is a double-edged sword, or can be seen as that, at least in the minds of journalists who say, wait, I just learned how to do this one thing and now there's this new thing. So the beauty in that is that journalism is not a solo act. That journalism, in almost every case I can think of, is something that needs to be done collaboratively, at least in a small team. And in that small team, you can bring together people who can help you think through the plan of how you get your story out and get it shared, or people who have certain beats and expertise, whether it's in video or photography or live blogging or Instagramming or whatever it might be. So the future of storytelling is in knowing how to work within teams to be able to take advantage of all this growth in tools and technologies, and to get fun and creative and make an impact with stories that the world needs.
You talk about connecting. The election is an easy topic to use as an example. How is CNN breaking through the echo chamber of Democrats and Republicans and getting stories out there so that if a Republican reads it, they're not just thinking, oh, they're slamming my party, or oh, they're just saying that because of X, Y, Z. How is CNN working to sort of not play partisan politics?
I mean, listen, we are immensely proud. We have made a significant investment in CNN politics in the last year, gearing up for 2016, which apparently started a long time ago.
It started back in 2012. I think.
Exactly. So we have hired a wonderful team of 20 to 30, I think we're getting closer to 30 now, digital journalists, in addition to all of the wonderful journalists in the DC Bureau, many of whom are doing digital-centric work to prepare for the election and tell the stories that are bubbling up right now as you and I sit here. And I was recently in DC talking to that team and praising them for being number one in politics for 7 months in a row, where a year ago we weren't even on the map in that. So it's really about, and maybe I'm skirting your question a little bit, but this is really about getting good people who think story first, who have a variety of tools and techniques to tell the stories both of the day and of the week and of the moment and of our times in a really impactful way across a series of digital platforms, and to do it not with one party leaning one way or the other, but to do it as straight up and objectively, but also passionately at the same time.
So with about 90 seconds left, I mean, that sounds like quite the challenge. What would you say is the hardest part about doing online news?
Staying on top of all the change and learning how to embrace it, and learning how to say, we used to do something this way, maybe only a few weeks or a few months ago, and now we're going to change and pivot and doing something this way. And being able to keep an eye out for that and to work with people in a collaborative way to make those shifts. Journalism is not an industry that is full of legacy habits anymore. It's an industry that's full of constant reinvention and evolution.
So I'll get you out with this question. What is the future of online news? I'm going to ask you to predict the future. Tell me what social media app is next.
Well, I'll tell you my favorite thing, and I don't know if this is the future, but I really loved going back to politics and the debate. We did an experiment with virtual reality. And you got to get the headset, which is a little bit of a barrier. It's a price barrier. It's a technology barrier. But the experience was truly immersive. And to be able to be inside of an experience or a live event while it's happening, and to be able to overlay data and information and be immersive in that, storytelling is just getting more and more immersive where you feel like you're in it. And I think we'll go somewhere near there.
We'll have to come back and talk to you about that, and
Please.
How CNN is once again at the forefront.
Good.
So that'll do it for this edition of Global Journalist, a production of the Reynolds Journalism Institute and the Missouri School of Journalism. Again, many, many thanks to Meredith Artley for joining us on today's program. Our producer this week is Annie Rice. Our studio director is Travis McMillan of RJI. For all of us here at Global Journalist, I'm Joshua Kransberg. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.